Clark Jensen was once among Denmark's most feared outlaw bikers, a shadowy enforcer whose name echoed across the Nordic underworld. Jensen didn't just take part in the infamous Nordic Biker War. He helped start it.
Som jeg forstår det efter de oplysninger, vi har fået, der er der ingen tvivl om, at Clark, han er ligesom det medlem af Hells Angels, der er mest opsat på at få startet en krig.
As a top figure in the Hells Angels, he belonged to a brutal inner circle known for violence, so extreme that the Hells Angels eventually disbanded his chapter.
Jamen altså, jeg lagde mig ud med Clark, fordi at jeg ligesom sagde min mening, og så han så sit snit til og smide sine svinestreger.
A relentless provocateur and strategist, he pushed hard for open war with the Bandidos, becoming one of the conflict's chief architects.
Blandt andet ham, der hed Clark. Han var meget imod Undertaker. Så blev han ved med at spænde ben hver gang, at vi lavede et eller andet tiltag.
But then came a twist. A personal insult drove him to go against his own. He defected to the Bandidos and helped launch their first chapter in Sweden, stoking the very fire he had once fueled from the other side. This is the story of Clark Jensen, one of Scandinavia's most infamous outlaw bikers. Remember to subscribe and put on all notifications so you don't miss my next biker video. Clark Jensen became part of the Hells Angels in Helsingør in 1984, joining one of the very first Hells Angels chapters in Scandinavia. At the time, Jensen was a physically imposing figure known simply as Clark, sometimes called Mr. C. He was a man who commanded both respect and authority, a dominant presence within the biker world. Clark first emerged in the Danish biker scene during the early 1980s, rising through the ranks of the Hells Angels. In the mid-80s, he was a key member of the Black Sheep MC, a club that would later become the Roskilde South Prospect chapter. This chapter earned its full patch after involvement in the high-profile murder of the president of a rival gang, Bullshit MC. Check out my video for the full story on that. The newly minted chapter was led by Michael Erik Olsen and quickly developed a reputation for extreme violence and chaos. Much of this was driven by a notorious subgroup known as the Terror Team, of which Clark was a central member. The Terror Team was a tight-knit circle of feared enforcers. Their duties ranged from debt collection and enforcing loyalty, to acting as security during key meetings, and even forcing discipline to members or associates who broke club rules. Their brutal efficiency and willingness to use violence made them both feared and controversial and sowed seeds of internal conflict, particularly with fellow members like Dan Lang.
Jamen altså, jeg lagde mig ud med Clark, fordi at jeg ligesom sagde min mening, ikke? Og det har jeg sgu altid gjort i klubben. Så jeg har jo ikke bare kørt med på hans soloshow, som flere andre i klubben valgte at gøre.
Clark would not tolerate any opposition and fought back fiercely.
Og så blev Clark vildt sur over det. Og lige så snart, at jeg havde haft den her afklaring med Clark, så vidste jeg godt, at så gik han over i sit sædvanlige modus, og så han så sit snit til og smide sine svinestreger. Jeg ved, at han har været drivende bag min udsmidning.
The chaos in his chapter eventually became too much. In 1986, under pressure from the Hells Angels leadership, the Roskilde South chapter was officially disbanded due to its uncontrollable behavior, internal strife, and the unwanted media attention it had attracted. Although Clark was without a club, he didn't vanish from the scene. He maintained close ties to Angels members and later resurfaced in Helsingborg in Sweden as part of the White Trash MC. There, he rode alongside Michael Ljunggren, who would eventually become the president of Bandidos in Sweden and be assassinated shortly after. White Trash MC became a Hells Angels Prospect chapter, but before they could be fully patched over, a police raid that same year brought everything crashing down, forcing the club to disband. In the aftermath, Clark and Michael Ljunggren regrouped. In 1991, they co-founded Morbid's MC in Helsingborg and maintained close ties with the Hells Angels. According to Swedish sources, Clark often served as a bodyguard for high-ranking Angels and affiliated leaders, continuing to operate within the inner circles of power. The Undertaker's MC were a biker gang that frequently clashed with the Angels. While many members wanted to de-escalate the hostilities, Clark was a major voice for war, deliberately sabotaging any efforts toward peace.
Vi er ved at blive uvenner med dem, der hedder Undertakers og 666 for Stenløs. Blandt andet ham, der hed Clark. Han var meget, meget imod Undertakers. Og til min store overraskelse, der blev han ved med at spænde ben hver gang, at vi lavede et eller andet tiltag, der måske bragte klubberne lidt nærmere og tættere på hinanden igen.
Rejected and looking for new allies, the Undertakers turned to the newly formed Bandidos chapter of Marseille. This budding friendship offered not only a gateway into a powerful international club, but also a chance to stand united against the Angels.
Vi var ikke ligesom alle andre motorklubber i Danmark, som skulle bukke sig under for HR, og vi ville i hvert fald ikke, og vi var bare over 21 mod stort set hele Danmark. Fordi dem, der ville tage kontakt med os, fik at vide, at de blev smadret og lukket.
Inside the Angels in Denmark, opinions were divided. Some viewed the emerging Bandidos presence as a manageable development, not worth triggering another war for.
Jeg tror, der er nogle stridigheder det hele taget i klubben om, hvad man vil. Nogle er mere krigsparate, voldsparate end andre er. Og jeg tror i virkeligheden, det er sådan noget fnider, der ligger bag.
Most wanted to avoid war, but Clark was among the loudest voices calling for confrontation.
Som jeg forstår det efter de oplysninger, vi har fået, der er der ingen tvivl om, at Clark, han er ligesom det medlem af Hells Angels, der er mest opsat på at få startet en krig.
The Angels now offered Clark's club, the Morbids, to patch over, but it came with a condition. They can only join if they merge with Rebels MC, a local rival which the Morbids had clashed with many times. To Clark and Ljunggren, the demand was insulting. They thought it was a politically motivated power play that would cost them both pride and autonomy. They refused. That decision changed everything. What began as loyalty to the Angels ended in the complete opposite. Clark and Ljunggren turned their backs on their former allies and aligned themselves with their bitter rivals, the Bandidos. In January 1994, Morbids MC was granted probationary status as a Bandidos chapter. Just a year later, they were officially patched over, becoming the first Bandidos chapter in Sweden. This marked a pivotal moment in Scandinavian biker history and the beginning of the great Nordic Biker War. As both a symbolic and strategic figure, Clark was instrumental in recruiting new chapters and driving the Bandidos' aggressive expansion across Sweden. He was one of the key architects behind this rapid growth, helping to escalate the tensions with the Angels into a full-blown regional turf war. According to biker experts, the Swedish patchover was a major trigger to start the war. Clark's public image also fueled controversy. He bore Nazi-style tattoos, and several of the recruits he brought into the organization were reported by Swedish media to be Nazis and hardened criminals, sparking widespread shock and outrage across Scandinavia. Law enforcement viewed him as a ruthless and pragmatic operator. In 1995, Ljunggren and Clark were returning from a visit to the Finnish branch of the Undertakers in Helsinki, which would become a Bandidos probationary chapter, a trip where Clark acted as Ljunggren's bodyguard. The pair boarded a ferry to Stockholm and then rode their bike south toward Helsingborg. Along the way, Clark's bike broke down, forcing him to stop while Ljunggren continued the journey alone. Shortly after, Ljunggren was ambushed on the motorway and was fatally shot with a rifle while riding his motorcycle.
I juli sidste år blev præsidenten for de svenske Bandidos skudt ned, da han kom kørende på denne landevej på sin motorcykel.
Clark's name quickly surfaced in the murder investigation, as he had been traveling with Ljunggren earlier that same day. Police even suspected he might have witnessed the killing or been nearby when it occurred. However, no charges were ever brought against him or anybody else, and the murder remains unsolved to this day. A year later, Clark was wounded in a shootout in the port area of Helsingborg. He was shot twice, though the injuries were not life-threatening, and he eventually recovered. The attack sent a clear message. By switching allegiances between outlaw motorcycle clubs, Clark had become fair game in the brutal world of Nordic biker warfare. Clark's influence extended far beyond Sweden. A close associate of Danish Bandidos president Jim Tinden, he played a pivotal role in the club's international expansion, most notably helping to establish a Bandidos presence in Canada, his country of birth. By the early 2000s, Clark had risen to become one of the most powerful Bandidos leaders, not just in Scandinavia, but across Europe. In 1999, he emerged as the leader of the Helsingborg chapter, effectively assuming control over the club's Swedish operations. Under his command, the Helsingborg chapter became the Bandidos' national headquarters in Sweden. According to insiders, Clark ruled the organization with a firm hand, frequently traveling to local chapters to deliver instructions and assert his authority. In 2003, the Hells Angels and Bandidos declared a truce, signaling a temporary pause in the brutal Nordic Biker War. That same year, Clark formally stepped down from his official role within the Bandidos, citing serious health issues. According to his girlfriend, Clark had only 30% lung capacity and required regular hospital checkups to monitor his condition. Despite his resignation, he remained an influential figure within the outlaw biker scene, and his illness did little to soften his reputation. Sources within the biker world described him in stark and often contradictory terms: intelligent, cunning, dangerous, malicious, destructive, dark, racist, manipulative, and deeply homophobic. At the same time, those close to him also recalled a different side, a warm, almost grandfatherly figure to his girlfriend's daughter and other children in their social circle. In 2006, Swedish police carried out a major raid on the Bandidos clubhouse in Gothenburg. Clark was present along with Danish Bandidos president Jim Tinden. Both men were detained for drug testing. Clark's test reportedly came back positive for amphetamine and cocaine, leading to a minor narcotics charge. Despite this, Swedish prosecutors were never able to link him to any violent crimes, and, aside from that single offense, he avoided convictions in Sweden. Though no longer an official member, Clark remained a respected and celebrated figure within the Bandidos. The club marked his 50th birthday with a lavish party at their clubhouse. Around 40 to 50 people attended the celebration, mostly full-patch Bandidos members and several women. During the festivities, Bandidos president Arash Hamidin gave a striking speech. He said, "Clark is number one on a death list, but he doesn't give up. If he has any career left, it's going straight to hell." He continued with dark humor. Clark has never had problems with drugs. On the contrary, cocaine has had problems with Clark. In South America, they walk around wearing t-shirts with his name on them. After the speech, a birthday cake was brought out, not marked with Clark 50 years, but simply Clark with a question mark after it. Was it a playful nod to his dangerous lifestyle, or a chilling prophecy that something darker was coming? Because just 1 year later, Clark vanished without a trace. On December 6, 2011, he left his home and never returned. A week later, his rental car was found burned out in a wooded area near Copenhagen. Danish investigators strongly suspect that Clark met a violent end. Though no body was ever recovered, police publicly consider him a likely homicide victim. René Vestergaard is a former member of the Bandidos who, after being involved in serious organized crime, chose to go to the police and expose the activities of his inner circle when the Bandidos began threatening his family. According to him and his book, several high-ranking members of the Bandidos told him what happened when Clark disappeared. He recounts meeting a high-ranking Bandidos who said maybe he ran off to Thailand, but at the same time he drew a finger across his throat as a symbol that Clark was dead. One of those present during the killing said of Clark, "The coolest guy I've seen who knew he was going to die was Clark." A high-ranking member then stepped forward and fired a gun, René Vestergaard says in the book. Among the club, an eerie in-joke reportedly began to circulate. Where is Clark?
Og jeg tror i virkeligheden, det er sådan noget fnider, der ligger bag, at man bliver træt af ham.
Vestergaard especially remembered Clark for these words. "It doesn't matter how good friends you are. At some point, they'll come after you. So get something on them and use it." Clark Jensen's life mirrors the violent arc of the Nordic outlaw biker scene itself. From his beginnings with the Hells Angels, to becoming a central figure in the Bandidos expansion into Sweden and through the brutal turf wars of the 1990s, he was an instigator, a product, and a driver of that world. Remember to subscribe and put on all notifications so you don't miss my next biker video.